So, how was it teaching? How was it being a teacher during the pandemic?
I don't think anybody was ready for this. I remember we were on spring break. This was in, I guess it was 2020. Yeah, 2020, spring break. And we were told not to come back. I didn't know why. I knew that the pandemic stuff was happening in another country, but I just thought it didn't have anything to do with me. And before you know it, about a week later, we were given instruction to show up to the school. The first thing we did, which is, for me, unconscionable, is we were told to throw out all of the materials in the classroom. And just from a logical standpoint, I'm like, look, I work at a Title I school. We're going to throw away material because we don't know enough about this thing. And so I couldn't do that. And so what I did is I packed everything up in the back of my ride. And I went to my ladies who worked in the front office. And I said, take anything you see out of my vehicle. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, they're making me throw away brand new crayons, brand new markers, textbooks, workbooks. Any books I had in my class had anything to do with science. I was teaching science at the time, 7th and 8th grade. And I told them to just take it. Some of them had relatives in other states and other countries that they could give to. And so everything else that I didn't give to those ladies, I took to Goodwills and things like that. But that was the beginning. The next step was getting technology to students. And so I will give it credit. The district I was working at the time was very efficient. Fortunately for us, we already had a grant from a tech company that provided iPads for all students from 5th to 8th grade. All we had to do was figure out how to get technology to the students from K to 4. So what we did is devise kind of a ratio. If you had 2 kids, you got 1 device. If you had 3 kids, you got 2 devices, so on and so forth. But once we got the technology out, now it was, how do we take all of these lessons we're used to doing in person and doing it online? And for me personally, it wasn't that difficult because I had a really good rapport with all my students, so I was able to transition through that fairly seamlessly. But for a lot of people, it was really difficult. They didn't have good rapport with their students, so students didn't show up. They weren't doing any of the lessons. And so that was the biggest issue, and that issue continued on. So I left that district. It was just time for a change. There was no particular reason. I went on to a new district. It was just time for me to try something new. This district was further behind than that district, though. They didn't have the funding for the technology. So all they had done the year before was packets. And I mean paper stapled packets. So basically the kids did nothing. So for an entire quarter, they didn't do any learning. So when we came back and we implemented the digital learning, the good thing for me is I had piloted some of that already, so I knew how to do it. The bad thing was the district didn't know how to implement the technology. So we were cold calling parents to get emails. We were cold calling parents to give them the information they need to log in. And so all of that was a very tedious process. And the parents were frustrated. Rightfully so. They were worried about their health. They were worried about their finances. And we're calling them to tell them, hey, you need to get on Wi-Fi. Some of which didn't have Wi-Fi. And so it was a difficult start. But once we kind of got the hang of it, the next issue became attendance. Nobody was showing up. And the kids that did show up didn't want to turn on their screens. And the kids that did turn on their screens had people walking in the background and all types of things. I had to turn it into kind of a game. So I would start class, say, okay, well, who's in our background today? And we'd see mom in the back, and I would talk to the parents. My whole thing was this. I had to turn into an entertainer or a game show host. My whole thing was this. I got to make this entertaining enough that the kids are going to turn on their videos and want to be a part of what's going on. Forget about being a teacher at that point. My point now was just to get your attention. So I thought of everything I'd seen on TV, from Nickelodeon to The Price is Right to The Cosby Show. What can I do to make these kids engage, laugh, cry, anything, evoke some kind of emotion? Because quite honestly, everybody was terrified. People were dying from COVID. People were losing jobs. So there was a lot of negativity going on right then. So yes, did I teach science? Absolutely. But I was more concerned with talking to my students. I was more concerned with knowing what was going on with them. My parent-teacher conferences became counseling sessions. I had parents crying, talking about they were going to have to move. I had parents crying about how difficult it was to manage all 4 of their kids in different grade levels sitting at the kitchen table. And so it took on a completely different dynamic. Now, truth be told, I did some of that before the pandemic, but everything got magnified. So to me, what the pandemic did is it magnified anything that was bad and minimized everything that was good.
I see what you're saying now, because once you